Amma woke before the first light of dawn, the sky still a deep violet, streaked with the faint glow of the sun yet to rise. Her bare feet pressed into the cold, damp earth as she made her way to the well, balancing an empty clay pot on her hip. Every step was heavy with exhaustion, but she moved with quiet determination. This was her life, hard, relentless, and unyielding, but she had long learned to carry its burdens without complaint. Her home was small and humble, a hut made of clay and thatch with cracks along the walls. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of herbs and the faint smoke of last night's fire. Her mother lay under a thin blanket, her breathing shallow and uneven from sickness. Two younger siblings huddled together, their faces pale and thin from hunger. Amma knelt beside them, filling their cups with water, trying to mask the emptiness she felt in her own stomach. Despite the harshness of her life, Amma was known in the village for her kindness. She mended clothes for neighbors, offered comforting words to the lonely, and shared whatever little food she could spare. Her poverty had shaped her body and her hands, but it had not hardened her heart. She carried herself with a quiet dignity, a strength that inspired both admiration and sympathy in those who knew her. Amma's daily routine was a relentless cycle of labor. She tended the small plot of crops that barely yielded enough to feed her family, trekked long distances to gather firewood, and sometimes took odd jobs in the village to earn a few coins. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, yet she never allowed herself to despair completely. When she knelt beside her mother or tucked her siblings into bed, she whispered small prayers, prayers for food, for health, for a brighter future. Her heart carried a hope that refused to die. Amma dreamed of a day when her family would no longer fear the pangs of hunger, when her mother would rise strong from her sickness, and when her siblings could grow free from the shadow of poverty. It was a simple dream, almost fragile in its impossibility, but it was all she had. Every act of love, every sacrifice, was fueled by that single desire: a better life for those she loved most. The villagers often watched Amma quietly, noticing the tireless effort in her hands, the gentle patience in her words, and the soft, determined expression she carried even in exhaustion. Some whispered about her resilience, others shook their heads in pity. But Amma never faltered. She did not ask for recognition or reward. Her satisfaction came from the small joys of helping her family, from seeing her siblings smile even when the world around them was harsh and unforgiving. Yet beneath her strength, a quiet longing simmered. She wanted more than survival. She wanted hope that could grow into reality. She dreamed that one day her tears, her prayers, and her relentless devotion might be answered, not just in fleeting relief, but in a lasting change, a true blessing for her family. Though she did not know how or when, that hope stayed with her, a fragile flame against the darkness of struggle. Amma's life was one of hardship, yes, but it was also full of love, courage, and unwavering devotion. And it was this very heart, pure and tireless, that would soon awaken a miracle beyond her wildest dreams. The rains never came that year. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and the earth beneath the village cracked like dry clay under the unrelenting sun. Fields that had once held the promise of life now lay barren, their crops withered and broken. The village was gripped by fear and despair. Mothers whispered prayers into the wind, fathers cursed their luck, and children went to bed hungry, their stomachs aching with emptiness. Amma felt the weight of the famine in every fiber of her being. The small supply of grain in her hut had nearly vanished, and even the water from the well had begun to feel scarce and precious. Her mother's cough had grown harsh and persistent, and her siblings' thin arms and sunken eyes reminded her of the fragility of life. Every day she tried to make the small amount of food stretch further, but the hunger gnawed at all of them, a silent, unrelenting torment. One evening, as the sun sank low behind the cracked horizon, Amma sat outside her hut, worn hands clasping an empty bowl. The sky was painted with deep oranges and purples, but Amma saw no beauty in it, only the harsh reflection of a world that seemed determined to test her. She looked at her mother, whose chest heaved weakly with every cough, and at her siblings, who stared longingly at the empty pot. The despair in her heart became unbearable. She rose and walked toward the edge of the village, where the cracked earth met a sparse, dry field. The wind carried the whispers of the dying crops, and the sun beat down mercilessly, scorching the ground. Amma fell to her knees, her body trembling with exhaustion and grief. Her hands covered her face, and tears fell freely, hot and salty, carving small tracks across her cheeks. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel the full weight of hopelessness, the helplessness of a mother, a sister, and a daughter powerless against the hunger that stalked her family. And then it happened. A single tear slipped from her cheek and fell onto a small, nondescript stone lying among the dry grass. Amma did not notice it at first, consumed entirely by her grief. But the stone, plain and unassuming, began to shimmer faintly, as if responding to the raw emotion in her tears. It was subtle at first, a soft gleam that reflected the dying sunlight, but unmistakably there. Amma, too distraught to comprehend what she had just witnessed, sat in silence, trembling. From the distance, villagers observed her. Some whispered among themselves, calling her strange or foolish. "Why does she cry alone?" they murmured. "Perhaps the spirits are upon her." Others simply shook their heads, dismissing the display as the sadness that had become all too common in their lives. No one could see what Amma could not yet see, the tiny miracle quietly unfolding at her feet. Amma's despair was raw and human, yet it contained a fragile spark. She did not know it yet, but this moment, the depth of her sorrow, the weight of her love, and the tears she shed, was awakening something extraordinary. She remained there for hours, head bowed, weeping quietly into the evening shadows, unaware that her simple, pure grief had touched something magical. By the time Amma finally rose and returned to her hut, the stone still shimmered faintly beneath the fading light. She carried nothing with her but the heaviness in her heart. But the first thread of hope had been sown, an invisible seed planted by her tears, waiting for the moment it would reveal its power. And though she did not know it yet, this small, ordinary-looking stone was about to change her life forever. The next morning, Amma's sleep had been restless. Her dreams were filled with images of cracked earth and starving faces. Yet a faint glimmer of curiosity tugged at her heart. She could not forget the shimmer she had seen on the small stone the evening before. Rising before dawn, as was her habit, she made her way back to the outskirts of the village, her bare feet silent on the dry soil. The stone lay where she had left it. At first glance, it appeared ordinary, small, rough, and dusty. But as she knelt beside it, something caught her eye. The spot where her tears had fallen glowed softly, faintly, as if the morning sun had taken residence within it. Amma's breath caught in her throat. Could it be? Was it really possible that something as simple as a tear could have transformed this plain stone into something extraordinary? Hesitant and afraid, Amma reached out and touched it. Her fingers brushed the surface, and suddenly she realized it was cold, smooth, and unlike any stone she had ever known. As her palm lingered, it became undeniably clear. The tear's touch had turned the stone into gold. Amma gasped, stumbling backward, her heart hammering in disbelief. Fear and wonder battled inside her. Was this magic? Was it dangerous? Could she be punished for touching it? Amma's mind raced with questions. Yet at the same time, a quiet thrill pulsed through her veins. Could this be the miracle she had been dreaming of for so long? The answer to all her prayers? The key to saving her family from hunger and suffering? For the next few days, Amma experimented in secret. She cried on the stone again, unsure what she would find. And each time, where her tears fell, gold appeared. Small, radiant nuggets that seemed to capture the sunlight itself. Amma felt awe and fear in equal measure. Each nugget carried weight, not just in gold, but in the responsibility of knowing such power existed. Her nights became sleepless with worry and wonder. She pondered what this meant. Was the magic tied to her tears alone, or could it be triggered by anyone? And, most importantly, she wondered, was it meant only for her family, or was it a gift meant to change the lives of the entire village? She wrestled with guilt and temptation. The thought of keeping this secret weighed heavily, yet the urge to use it for good drove her forward. Amma began to use the gold cautiously. She bought medicine for her mother, food for her siblings, and repaired parts of their home that had been weakened by neglect and rain. Each act of kindness brought relief, but it also filled her with a mixture of fear and awe. The gold was powerful, yes, but it demanded responsibility and care. She began to sense that it was tied not to greed or desire, but to her sorrow, her love, and her selflessness. Word of small, unexplained improvements began to spread quietly through the village. Villagers noticed the sudden change in Amma's household. Her mother's health seemed to improve. Her siblings were stronger, and Amma herself moved with a lightness of spirit that had not been there before. Curiosity stirred, along with whispers of envy. Some wondered how such fortune had come to her family, while others dismissed it as luck. None knew the truth, and Amma was determined to keep it that way. Even as hope began to shine in her heart, Amma understood that the stone's magic was not limitless. It required her tears, her grief, and her purity of intention. The power was a gift, fragile and delicate, and she could feel the weight of its moral responsibility pressing upon her. It was more than wealth, it was a test of character, a challenge to her courage, selflessness, and love for her family. Amma's discovery transformed her from a woman weighed down by despair into one carrying a quiet, cautious hope. She realized that miracles could exist, but they demanded respect, restraint, and care. The stone had become her secret, a beacon of hope that she alone understood. And it was a secret she vowed to protect, not for greed, but for the survival and well-being of those she loved most. In the quiet of the morning, with the gold glinting softly beneath her fingertips, Amma allowed herself a small smile. For the first time in many long months, she felt that a real change might be coming. And though the path ahead was uncertain, one truth was clear. The power of her tears had awakened something extraordinary, something that would soon test her heart, her courage, and the strength of her love. Amma's life had begun to change, but the weight of her secret pressed on her with every passing day. The gold she had discovered was no longer just a miracle. It was a responsibility. She used it sparingly, buying food for her siblings, medicine for her mother, and repairing the broken walls of their small hut. Each small act of generosity brought relief and hope. Yet it also carried a growing fear. What if someone discovered her secret? The village, already weary from the famine, had started to notice small improvements in Amma's household. Her mother's health seemed to return slowly. Her siblings grew stronger, and Amma herself walked with a quiet confidence that had not been there before. Villagers whispered behind her back, curiosity mingling with envy. Some admired her resilience, others grew suspicious, sensing that Amma's sudden fortune was no accident. Among them was Yaw, a neighbor with a sharp mind and a sharper heart. He had long watched Amma's family struggle while his own faced hardship, and he could not understand how theirs had improved. Jealousy burned inside him, turning to obsession. He observed Amma closely, noting her secretive behavior and frequent trips to the outskirts of the village. Suspicion turned into greed, and greed into determination. Yaw wanted the gold, and he would not hesitate to take it by force if necessary. Amma, unaware of the full extent of his intentions, felt the pressure growing within her. Every day she struggled with the fear of being discovered. Every interaction with villagers carried the potential for suspicion. She could see it in the eyes of those around her. The small glances, the hushed whispers, the envious murmurs. She knew she could not reveal the stone's secret without bringing danger to her family. At the same time, Amma wrestled with temptation. The gold could provide so much more than survival. She could rebuild her family's home entirely, ensure her siblings never went hungry again, even improve the village's conditions. Yet she understood the moral weight of the stone's magic. It was a gift born from sorrow and selflessness, not from desire or greed. To misuse it for her own gain would risk everything, not only the magic, but the purity of her intentions. One evening, as Amma sat beside the glowing stone, she wept quietly, not from despair, but from the burden of responsibility. Each gold nugget she touched was a reminder of the delicate balance she maintained. Her thoughts were consumed by fear, guilt, and hope all at once. The stone's magic had the power to change lives, but only if she remained true to herself. Meanwhile, Yaw's determination escalated. He began plotting, watching Amma's movements, asking pointed questions of villagers who might know more. He tested her boundaries, trying to manipulate her into revealing the secret. Amma felt the tension rising around her. Every knock at the door, every passing glance carried the threat of exposure. Amma's resolve was tested in quiet, painful moments. At times, the temptation to use the gold for herself, to relieve her worries completely, whispered in her ear. The fear of losing the magic, of failing her family, weighed heavily on her heart. But she always returned to the same thought. This gift was not meant for greed. It was a responsibility, a measure of her selflessness, and a testament to the purity of her love for those she cared about most. The days grew tense. Amma moved with care, hiding the stone and her tears from prying eyes. Yaw continued his pursuit, patient and cunning, a constant shadow of danger looming over her family. The villagers' curiosity was growing, and subtle envy began to bubble into open resentment. The delicate balance between hope and despair threatened to collapse under the weight of human desire. Amma understood one painful truth: her family's safety, the stone's magic, and her own conscience were all intertwined. She could not falter, could not give in to greed, and could not allow fear to control her. Every decision mattered. Every tear she shed was now more than an expression of sorrow. It was a choice, a measure of courage and integrity that would define her character. The tension reached a point where Amma could feel the storm approaching, not of weather, but of human nature. The greed and envy of those around her, Yaw's growing obsession, and the precarious magic of the stone all converged, testing her heart and her strength like never before. She knew that the coming days would demand not only her courage, but also her wisdom and selflessness. The true trial of her life was about to begin, and the stakes could not have been higher. Amma, kneeling before the small golden stone, whispered a prayer. Her tears, her love, and her sorrow had brought this miracle into the world. And now she would have to guard it, protect it, and use it wisely, or risk losing everything she held dear. The storm came without warning. Dark clouds swallowed the sky, and the wind howled across the village, rattling the fragile huts and bending the dry trees as if warning the people of the coming danger. Rain poured in torrents, drenching the parched earth and turning the dirt paths into slippery mud. The famine had weakened the villagers, and now nature itself seemed determined to test their resilience. Amma's heart raced as she hurried to secure her family and the little they had managed to save. The wind tore at the roof of their hut, and water began to seep through the cracks. Her mother coughed violently, her frail body shivering from the chill. Her siblings clung to her, frightened, their eyes wide with terror. Amma's hands shook as she tried to hold back the panic. She had faced hardship before, but this storm felt different. It was bigger than hunger, bigger than fear. It threatened to sweep away everything she loved. And then Yaw appeared. The neighbor, driven by envy and greed, had come in search of the stone. Rain plastered his hair to his forehead, and his eyes gleamed with determination. "Amma!" he shouted over the roar of the storm. "Give me the gold! I know you have it! It belongs to me!" Amma's heart clenched. She could feel the danger pressing down from all sides, the fury of nature, the desperation in Yaw's eyes, and the fragile safety of her family. She knew in that moment that the stone's magic was not hers to hoard. It was a force for change, for life, for those in need. The choice was clear, though it terrified her. She could protect the gold for herself and risk the destruction of her family and village, or she could use it selflessly to save everyone, even if it meant losing it forever. Tears mingled with the rain as Amma dropped to her knees before the stone, her fingers brushing its shimmering surface. "Please," she whispered, "help us survive. Let this not be for greed, but for love, for life." She let her tears fall freely onto the stone, and a soft, golden glow began to spread across its surface. The storm seemed to respond. Rain softened, winds lessened, and the rushing water that had threatened to flood the village began to recede. Fields soaked by the downpour shimmered with life, as if the earth itself had been renewed. Amma's neighbors, watching in awe, saw the miracle unfold. The river that had overflowed calmed. Crops that had been destroyed began to stand again, and even the animals returned to their shelters. The power of the stone had been unleashed not for wealth, but for salvation. Yaw staggered back. Disbelief and fear etched across his face. He had sought the gold for selfish gain, and now he saw it was beyond his grasp. The stone did not respond to greed, only to sorrow and selflessness. He understood too late that the treasure he had desired was never meant for him. Amma, soaked to the bone, held her family close as relief washed over her. Her mother coughed less. Her siblings' frightened faces slowly relaxed, and the village began to stir with hope once more. Exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her, but Amma's spirit burned brighter than ever. She had faced the ultimate test, and through her love, courage, and selflessness, she had prevailed. The storm passed, leaving the village drenched but alive. Villagers gathered to witness the aftermath, their eyes wide with amazement. They saw Amma not as the poor, struggling woman they had once pitied, but as a hero, a guardian of life itself. The stone had done more than transform sorrow into gold. It had revealed the strength of a pure heart, the power of selflessness, and the enduring force of love. Amma looked down at the stone one last time. The glow faded, shrinking until it was nothing more than an ordinary stone again. She felt a pang of loss, but it was tempered by the knowledge that the magic had already done what it was meant to do. Her family was safe. The village had been spared. And the lesson of her courage would remain with everyone who witnessed it. In that moment, Amma understood the true meaning of the gift. It had not been gold that saved them, but the love and tears she had offered willingly. The stone had been a catalyst, a mirror of her heart, and though its magic was gone, the lives it had touched, the hope it had created, and the faith it had inspired were eternal. The villagers slowly approached, offering thanks and admiration. Even Yaw, humbled and ashamed, nodded in respect. Amma, drenched and weary, simply held her family close. She did not need gold to feel rich. She had discovered something far more valuable: the power of selfless love, the strength of resilience, and the knowledge that even in the darkest moments, hope could shine brighter than any treasure. The days after the storm were filled with quiet miracles. The village, once parched and desperate, began to heal. Crops that had been scorched by the sun now stood green and sturdy, replenished by the life-giving rain. Wells overflowed with fresh water, and the air seemed lighter, carrying the scent of earth renewed. The villagers moved through their daily routines with a newfound sense of hope, whispering words of thanks and awe at what had occurred. Amma's family, at the center of it all, began to thrive. Her mother's cough grew weaker with each passing day, her cheeks regaining a healthy glow. Her siblings' faces filled with color and energy, and laughter began to echo once more through their small hut. The relief Amma had felt during the storm became a constant presence, though the weight of responsibility lingered. She knew that their survival had depended not on wealth, but on her heart and her choices. Amma understood something profound now. It had never been the gold itself that had saved them. It had been her tears, her sorrow, and her unwavering selflessness. The stone had been a conduit, a mirror reflecting the love and sacrifice she carried within her. It had magnified what was already inside her heart, teaching her that true change could not be forced or bought. It had to be earned through courage, compassion, and sacrifice. The villagers slowly came to recognize Amma for more than her resilience. They saw her bravery, her humility, and her generosity, and they treated her with a respect that went beyond admiration. Mothers spoke of her to their children. Elders nodded in approval when they saw her tending to the weak, and even those who had once whispered envy now approached her with gratitude. Amma had transformed not only the lives of her family, but the spirit of the entire village. Yaw, the neighbor who had sought the stone for his own gain, approached her quietly one morning. There were no words of accusation or anger, only recognition of the lesson he had learned. Humility softened his eyes as he saw the consequences of greed and the power of selfless action. Amma, as always, did not hold anger. She understood that each person had their own path to understanding, and she had learned hers through the crucible of hardship. Though the magical stone had vanished, its impact remained. The gold it had created had been enough to repair homes, feed families, and provide medicine for the sick. The village was no longer a place of despair. It was alive, thriving, and united. Amma's heart, once heavy with worry and grief, now carried peace. She knew that miracles did not always come in the form of wealth. Sometimes they came through love, perseverance, and the courage to act selflessly even when the outcome was uncertain. Amma continued her work, not as a burden, but as a calling. She tended her crops, cared for her family, and quietly helped neighbors who were still recovering from the hardships of the famine. She did not boast of her deeds, nor did she seek reward. Her satisfaction was in seeing the village flourish, in knowing that her tears and love had made a difference. The villagers often spoke of that time with reverence. They told stories of the woman whose sorrow had become gold, who had faced temptation, fear, and danger, and yet had chosen selflessness over greed. Amma's story became a lesson for all, that true strength is measured not by wealth, but by the courage to act with love and integrity. Even in the face of overwhelming adversity, Amma herself remained humble, never claiming more than she needed. Her family's lives had been transformed, but she lived simply, quietly, and with purpose. The gold may have been gone, but its power, its lesson, was eternal. She had learned that hope could be born from despair, that selflessness could create miracles, and that even the smallest act of love could have a ripple effect far beyond what the eye could see. In the calm that followed the storm, Amma often stood at the edge of the village, looking out over the fields and listening to the laughter of her siblings. She thought of the tears she had shed, the fear she had faced, and the courage she had discovered within herself, and she smiled, not for the gold that had come and gone, but for the knowledge that her heart had been strong enough to carry her family and her village through the darkest of times. Years passed, and Amma's story became more than memory. It became legend. She continued to live humbly in her small village, rising each day before the sun to care for her family and help those in need. She never sought wealth or recognition. Her joy came from seeing others flourish, from the quiet smiles of children, and from the soft gratitude of her neighbors. The tale of the woman whose tears had turned a simple stone into gold was told around fires, passed from elders to children, whispered to travelers who marveled at its truth. It became a story of hope, resilience, and selfless love, reminding everyone that even in the darkest times, a pure heart could create miracles. Amma's legacy lived not in the gold that had come and gone, but in the lives she had touched and the courage she had inspired. Her village thrived, bound together by the lessons of compassion and generosity she had embodied. And though the stone was gone, the truth remained. Sorrow, met with love and selflessness, could become the greatest treasure of all. In the hearts of all who knew her, Amma's story whispered a simple truth. One person's tears, when offered with pure intent, could change the world.